Okay, GARZA Aviation. Again, this is a complicated project, and I need to brief the board on this. You've got all this information in your Kindle, but let me start walking through it. First of all, the overall question is ground handling of CSI. One of the questions is, who is CSI? They are a charter airline company. They're contracted with Homeland Security. What they do is they go around the country, they pick up Mexican nationals who are here illegally, gather them up, bring them back here to Yuma, where they're turned over to Immigration and Customs Enforcement to put on buses, and then taken to the border where they're returned to their country. When CSI comes in, they go to airports all over the country. They're going to require, obviously, transit service to turn the aircraft. Normally, that's provided by local FBOs. CSI does contract with Millionaire at other airports. For whatever reason, they do not want to buy fuel here. Because they do not want to buy fuel here, Millionaire has a standard ground handling fee that they charge at all their locations, and they're charging that fee here. Now, CSI, like any business, is always trying to reduce their costs. And so what they're trying to do is find alternative providers. And that's what's causing the problem here. So let me go into it. Now, this is a difficult question, and it goes to answer the question, to understand, put in the right framework, we got to go back a ways. So I'm going to go through these slides here one at a time, or these timeline incidents. Back in January of 2010, after Luxair had departed, the airport authority made the decision that what we wanted to do was to have a nice terminal for general aviation on the airport. And so we signed a contract for $700,000 to refit the Yuma Pilot Center. Okay. Just after that, GARZA Aviation signed a lease for the wrong-way hangar. This is their original lease. Their original lease, we gave them an incubator rate at $1,000 a month. Okay, subsequent to that, Millionaire came to the airport. We did a deal with Millionaire, and we rented them half of the new pilot center. And as you may recall, the concept was we would have a nice GA facility. It would have 2 FBOs in there with 2 fuel desks that would be shared by the FBOs. Subsequent to that, CareFlight sold their FBO operations to Millionaire. We then signed an amended lease, and Millionaire now pays rent of $8,600 a month on this building. Subsequent to that, a former employee of CareFlight teamed up with GARZA Aviation, and there was a plan to sell fuel on the airport in competition with Millionaire. There was some discussion about that, and ultimately that plan was dropped. In the process, we signed a new lease with GARZA Aviation. This was a replacement lease. So the new lease was very specific about the use of premises. And as you can see here, this phrase in the lease, what we decided to do was provide him an even better incubator rate, so GARZA Aviation could be dedicated to providing aircraft maintenance and related services as determined by the airport authority. Okay. The terms of the lease, as you can see, the rent started out at $0 for 6 months, and then went up in $250 increments every 6 months. As of August of this year, it was rated to go up to $5,000. $500. Keep in mind that the normal lease on that building would be over $6,000. And then this lease was signed. So this is a contract. And so this is what we're basing our actions on. And if you go back and you look at the two leases, we have a very standard lease that we use for most of our tenants, and we modify them slightly. And in the original lease, we modified it slightly. We said fuel flowage fees are not really applicable, but we knew it was maintenance. But in the new lease, we went through and we took out all references to fuel sales and those kind of things. The old lease said fixed base operation, had the fuel sales concession desk concept in there. And the new lease, we took that completely out, designated it as an aircraft maintenance fixed base operation. Okay, so why are these leases important? This is kind of an industry general question. If you look at our airport, prior to Millionaire being here, we had 6 FBOs. In that period of time, all of them have gone under or sold out for one reason or another. This is something that you're seeing everywhere. Because of the economy, because of the increasing lower margins that you'll find, the smaller FBO operators just can't make it. On our airport, it's particularly important because of the scope of work that we're trying to do. So our lease concept is that we try and write leases that are good for the airport and good for the tenant. And then we enforce those leases. We have learned to our sorrow that if you don't enforce your lease, it comes back to haunt you. If you try and be a nice guy and work around the edges, it's just never going to work out. So we're very specific about our leases and we enforce them. We also make sure that we comply with the FAA's policy on exclusive use. And this becomes a confusing question at times, because a lot of times people will quote this out of context. The exclusive use is the oldest of the FAA grant assurances. You cannot unfairly favor one FBO over another in the normal sense of exclusive use. This comes, in fact, from the FAA Compliance Manual 5190. Okay, but 5190 goes into a lot of detail, and it talks about exclusive use versus minimum investment. These are quotes out of the Compliance Manual, and you'll see that the FAA recognizes that some FBOs are different from other FBOs, and what you can do is you can establish different fee schedules and different requirements to include minimum investment requirements for different kinds of FBO. So when we were going through this process, we developed a pretty comprehensive set of protocols for full service FBO, which was Millionaire. And in fact, we called the FBO when we were talking about Millionaire, and we called the FAA when we were talking about Millionaire, and we called them again when we were talking about GARZA Aviation. Because in fact, the exclusive use premise here, we had to be very careful with GARZA Aviation because we were giving them a very reduced rent to GARZA Aviation. So when we talked to the FAA about it, in all cases, the FAA said, yes, what you're doing is legal and smart, and we recommend that you do it that way. The reason that we were able to provide a reduced rent to, in fact, a subsidized rent to GARZA Aviation is because they qualify as a SASO, a single service provider. And again, this is a quote from the Compliance Manual. These type of companies differ from a full service FBO in that they offer a specialized service such as aircraft maintenance. Okay, it goes on to say that your minimum standards can be modified to take advantage of the opportunities that a SASO can bring to the airport. Now, in our case, we really wanted an aircraft maintenance provider on the airport. Because we are a small airport, we were concerned about a startup company being able to pay a big rent and still get started and get going. So we provided a reduced rent. It also says that an airport should not, without justification, require that a single service provider also meet the criteria for a full service FBO. In other words, we didn't require an investment from GARZA Aviation like we do require a large investment from a full service provider. And the reason I bring this up is because it's important that our full service FBO be able to handle the kinds of customers that we're trying to bring in. It takes a lot of money to put in the equipment, to put in the facilities to handle an aircraft like this, where the price tag starts at over $300 million.
$3 million.
Huh?
Not 300 million, $3 million.
No, this aircraft is $300 million. And so to take care of an aircraft for $300 million, you've got to have pretty sophisticated equipment to do that. So we have an obligation then, as the airport authority, to protect our investment. We ourselves have invested over $1 million in our efforts to attract a world-class FBO. As I said, we put in $700,000 into the pilot center. We put about $300,000 into getting a new fuel farm out there. We spent about $225,000 on 2 new fuel tanks, another $45,000 on digging up one of Martha's old tanks and putting it out there, another $90,000 or another $45,000 on getting electricity to the fuel farm. So it all adds up. We put in a lot of money, and we protect that investment by requiring a new full-service FBO to invest a significant amount of money to start operations on the airport. Now, it's important to realize this does not exclude anybody. If another FBO wants to come onto our airport and start providing full services, they can do that. But to do that, they have to meet the investment requirements. The reason we require that is so we know that a new FBO who wanted to do this would be able to do the proper servicing. At the same time, we do want to attract certain kinds of SASOs that we've identified, such as aircraft maintenance. And so with GARZA Aviation, we brought them in with a different kind of lease. They had no investment requirement, and we subsidized their rent to the fact that it started at zero. The reason is because we've learned that if we don't do this properly, we can get in trouble with our big industrial customers that are coming in here. If we don't take care of them, we can chase them away. A good example of that would be Omega Tanker. Back when Lux Air was here, the Omega Tanker came in, which would be hugely profitable for the airport and for the community, and they were not able to properly take care of that customer because they didn't have the equipment. So we want to make sure of that. By doing this, we have now learned that a properly invested FBO will pay for itself. It's good for the airport and it's good for the community. For example, Millionaire pays the airport $15,000 a month in rent, and last month paid us $43,000 in fuel flowage. In contrast to that, with GARZA Aviation, we waived $6,000 a month in fees. They had to borrow equipment from CSI, and they are not returning any income from that operation to the airport. Our concern is that now GARZA Aviation is trying to encroach on our business model and Millionaire's business model, in which we have literally invested millions of dollars. So that's the concern. So our lease is designed to protect the airport. We have verified that it's compliant with all of the FAA policies, and we enforce the lease. So again, back here to the timeline, in June of this year, CSI contacted the airport with a request that we provide ground services. We didn't have the full picture on this. It was presented to us as if you're not able to help us out, we're going to have to pull our business from here, because they provide service to Homeland Security, who's very important to us. We worked to come up with an arrangement that would satisfy them. And so what we did is we contracted with Millionaire and put together a deal wherein they agreed to buy a minimum amount of gas, 1,200 gallons a night, and they also did the turn service for CSI.
1,200 gallons a week.
A night. Yeah. As soon as we got into this, it became suddenly clear to us that CSI was in fact trying to just get cheaper prices. They didn't buy the gas that they promised that they would buy, and so we terminated that contract with them and told them to go back to Millionaire. Okay.
Can I ask what kind of service they need, and what is the term service for everybody? So everybody knows what we're talking about.
Good question. To turn an aircraft in jargon, what that means is an aircraft comes in, you want to marshal the aircraft in, you want to chock it, you want to put power on the aircraft, you want to post a fire guard during startup, and then you have a fire guard when they start engines, and then you marshal them out. Okay, that's your basic ground service.
Pretty much the same as an airline would go through?
Exactly. And those are the services that Millionaire had been providing to CSI up to that point. Okay, so then CSI, in an effort, again, to avoid paying the standard ground handling fee to Millionaire, and because they didn't want to buy fuel, this is a lot of this piece of speculation, but I'm assuming what they did is contacted GARZA Aviation and asked them for support, which GARZA Aviation said that they would do. Yes, sir.
Is there an additional requirement that aircraft be approved by maintenance or mechanic to be released for the next?
No, there's not. Up until that time, CSI had been coming in without any problems at all. There are post-flight, pre-flight requirements on an aircraft, but typically the pilot or the crew of the aircraft will provide those services. For example, when your average GA pilot goes out to fly, he does his own pre-flight, he does his own post-flight. The airliners that come in here every single day, if you watch out there, you'll see the pilot get off the aircraft, he'll walk around the aircraft, do his post-flight, and he'll walk around it again and do his pre-flight, or he'll do both at the same time. And so that is the inspection requirement that you're talking about. Now, if there is a maintenance requirement on the airplane, something breaks, well, then you have to have maintenance, a qualified maintenance person there to fix that. And you get into the Part 121 qualifications at that time as to who is authorized to fix it.
At some point, there may be a mechanic signature required for that
Right.
airplane to be dispatched to the
That's right. In other words,
you may not be able to do that without a mechanic.
Yeah, just to give you a personal example, when I used to be a crew chief in the Air Force, okay, and I would be out there and I would marshal the airplane in, okay, so the airplane would pull in, and let's say he called in with a hydraulic problem, okay, I would marshal the airplane in there doing the ground handling. I'd bring it in, I'd chock it, I'd put power on the airplane, and make sure that the airplane was situated. And then in the meantime, there's a pickup truck sitting next to me with the maintenance guy, the hydraulic guy. Okay, and I'd look over at him and I'd say, okay, it's your airplane. So he would go in and perform his maintenance. He would sign off the maintenance discrepancy. He would sign that the airplane was ready to go back and fly again. And then when he was done, he would leave, and the airplane's ready to go. I would go, okay, it's time to start up again. We start the engine and we marshal them out. Okay, so that's the difference between ground handling, your basic ground handling that an FBO would provide, and aircraft maintenance. So, did I answer your question?
Well, basically, there would be a mechanic's requirement that they inspect or approve that flight for that craft for the next flight.
No, the maintenance guy, he would sign off the specific write-up. In other words, let's say there was an engine problem. An engine guy would come out and say, okay, that engine is good, and I got to add oil, something like that.
In some operations that I've been involved in, you've had mechanics at every basic destination of the aircraft, so that if they do encounter issues, they can get those
That's true.
resolved.
In large military aircraft, you'll see that they'll have a pretty extensive crew on there to take care of some of those kinds of things.
Did this flight, and I'm not real familiar with the flight, did it ever come in with a mechanic with it? Or did they bring
Not
it
as far as
somewhere?
I know, but I don't know those kind of details. So anyway, CSI contacted GARZA Aviation, gave them the same story that they gave me, and then GARZA agreed to contract with them. After the first night, Millionaire, who thought they were going to be providing service, went out to the airplane, saw GARZA, and filed a complaint with the airport, first by phone, followed up with a letter, about GARZA encroaching upon their business model. We received the complaint. We investigated very carefully. As you can imagine, when you have a complaint between tenants, we confirmed with our attorney what this was all about. We went to GARZA Aviation, spoke to the owner, confirmed what was going on, and then gave him a letter saying, this is beyond the scope of your lease, it's beyond your the use of premises. It was a very detailed letter. We talked about the use of premises and other aspects in the lease to include conflicts between tenants, informing them that they could not get into that business. It was beyond the scope of what we anticipated they would do under the terms of their lease.
Use of premises, that means their premises where GARZA is located, actually.
It does.
Okay, so
It also, there's a...
anywhere on the airfield where needed.
There also is a good question. I don't have the specific answer to that, but I can tell you that somewhere in the lease there's a phrase that says use of premises in this regard means the entire airport as well.
But could I ask Millionaire a question just about the service?
Sure.
If there's a plane that happens to come in and unfortunately they land gear up, what do we do? I've heard a lot of different answers. What do we do? You're a full service FBO.
Well,
What do you do to
let
get your
me answer that, because that's written in the lease and in the minimum standards. Our full service FBO has a requirement to maintain the capability to remove aircraft up to 12,500 pounds from the runway. That's right. Anything over that, we turn it over to the military. And so their requirement is to go out and get the airplane, remove it from the runway. After that, it's the call of the aircraft owner.
And they have the capability to do that.
I hope so.
Yes. We have done it.
I mean, you have to know that there's...
So anyway, after speaking with GARZA Aviation, it was their decision to continue the ground services, after which we issued them a notice of default, letting them know that this is not in compliance with your lease, all the specifics about it, and what they had to do to cure that default. So the question is, now what happens? Our lease specifies that they have a 30-day cure period. To cure the default, GARZA Aviation must stop all the ground handling services. They need to make a good faith effort and resolve the dispute with other tenants, including potential damages to Millionaire for the business that they've taken from them. Also, in the lease, there is a clause here under Exhibit E that if they change the use of their premises, that will be considered by the authority to return to a normal business model and a departure from the incubation model. We have notified them that this is outside the incubator concept, and therefore we have increased their rate to the fair market value. At this point in time, GARZA Aviation has been non-responsive to our request that they stop, and it's been a difficult situation. Now, as best I can determine, their argument is what they're providing is quote, aircraft maintenance. Based on my research, I have to say that is not supported by my research into the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 14, Part 129, which talks about airline operations, 43, which talks about aircraft maintenance, and 145, which talks about a certificated maintenance unit. Also, it's contrary to their lease and to the minimum standards. Now, we don't know where this is going to go, but what we have done, working with Junior, is we've moved $100,000 into our legal expense account. I want to add to that, this is to cover temporary expenses. We have landlord insurance, obviously. Our landlord insurance covers legal expenses like this on a reimbursable basis. So if this does result in a lengthy legal action, obviously it will be expensive for GARZA Aviation, but not for us, other than those temporary expenses. So, yes.
Do you have any idea what they were charging, what GARZA was charging versus what Regular was charging?
I don't know the answer to that.
Mr. Williams, this is Albert Gardner.
Yes, sir.
Do you know if in the process of the things that GARZA Aviation has done, if they provided any maintenance services that require them to sign off the maintenance, or are they just doing ground handling that does not require a maintenance sign-off to CSI?
In my original conversation with the owner of GARZA Aviation, I expressed to him anytime CSI has a maintenance requirement, that he is certainly welcome to fulfill that maintenance requirement. That's what he's here on the airport for. But if it, on any given flight, the ground handling services is not within his purview. I do not know if there have been maintenance discrepancies on the CSI aircraft that have come in.
Well, as I understand it, what we wanted GARZA Aviation to do originally was provide the kind of maintenance that would require a sign-off. And there may have been ancillary items involved that didn't, but I think that was our whole idea, was that to have a maintenance provider to do those things that required maintenance sign-offs.
Yes, that is.
And if they're not doing that, it appears that is kind of outside the scope of their lease.
Yes, that's correct.
Anyway, let's go ahead.
So anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you bet. So the next step is we're providing GARZA time to cure their default. Their rent, as I said, it has been increased to fair market value. Now, because of that, they are delinquent in their rent to the airport, and they will soon be in default again on their lease for non-payment of rent. Now, so that's a lot of the bad news. The good news is if GARZA Aviation stops providing ground handling services, this can all go away. That is our goal. Our desire is to go back to normal operations. We still want GARZA Aviation on the airport providing airport maintenance. That was our desire from the get-go, and it remains our desire. If that happens today, the airport would be willing to reinstate their incubator rate. Yes, sir.
Previously, Millionaire was doing this process. What were they charging to do that?
I don't know the answer to that. I try not to get into our tenants' business and ask them what they charge for this.
Fair market value for it?
I would say fair market value. I would say that I am aware that Millionaire services CSI aircraft at other airports around the country. They have standard rates that they charge. And when a government contract goes out to bid, the people who are bidding on that contract will contact the local FBOs to get pricing. By law, Millionaire cannot provide a favorable rates to one person or another. They have to give, this is our standard rate, and that's what the bidders on the government contract then have to take, to bid on the contract with the government.
So, to our knowledge, they were charging what they charge at other airports?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. So anyway, so this is where, oh, sorry.
What is the contractual time?
30 days. 30 days. That 30 days expires on August the 22nd. So, we have some options now that we need to talk about as far as our strategy moving forward. My recommendation is we hold off on that and go into executive session to discuss that. Any questions?
Just reiterate what you would hope to have happen.
Yeah, our goal absolutely is to resolve this and have GARZA Aviation go back to providing maintenance as they previously were. I felt they were a valuable tenant, and I'd like to get back into that.
If that's the case, if they say like today or tomorrow, will they still have to pay that $6,000 that you?
No, right there, I make the comment, if this happens today, we will be more than happy to reinstate their incubator.
But you'll charge that off that you've already charged
that's
against their account. Okay.
That's right.
All right.
Just a couple of observations. One, I see the emails from GARZA's managing member. I don't see your emails.
Well, let's wait and we'll discuss it.
Well,
I've sent 3 emails.
okay, I just want to make sure that this is properly contextualized.
Okay.
And whether we discuss those emails in open session or in executive
Well,
session.
good question.
I still want to see the emails.
Okay, Janine wrote me and asked me that specific question, and I responded to you.
I received it.
And I can print that out for you here real quickly if you'd like that.
The next observation is, and it just, I don't know if it's style or what, but there's some editorialization in here that makes me just nervous.
Okay?
If you'll go back one slide. Any legal, or any lengthy legal action will be expensive for GARZA, but not for us. That may or may not be true, but it's the kind of editorialization that makes it appear to me that we're not interested in working with them. We're throwing down a gauntlet, and
Well,
that makes it hard to have conversations afterwards.
Fair point, that is certainly not my intent. I have in fact spoken to Mr. Garza and let him know that I'm available to speak with him at any time.
Okay. On the next slide, going forward, not back. If this happens today, does that mean by midnight tonight, or does that mean tomorrow, next week, or after we have some kind of conversation?
We sent a letter to GARZA Aviation within the past few days. Specifying today as kind of a drop dead date on the incubator rate.
I'm just of the mind that without the board knowing more about this, setting a deadline on the same day that we're having a meeting is just not quite as flexible as I believe we need to be.
Okay. Any other questions?
I guess to kind of go along with that comment, you give them a period to cure. You gave them a contract period to cure up front. Any other deadlines prior to the period to cure is probably not kosher.
Fair point. Let's bring that up in executive session.
No matter what we do, we have 2 very important FBOs on the field. We have Millionaire and GARZA. Very important. They're very important to each other. One has to recommend the other 4 certain services, and we've got to find a way to mediate this. And we don't have the people in this room that can do it. I would think we do, but they're very important to each other, and both of them are very important to the airport.
Absolutely.
So we've got to make this work.
Yeah. Okay.